Welcome to the Tuesday, October 6th, 2020 electronic meeting of the Ann Arbor Planning Commission. This meeting is in accordance with executive orders from the governor to effect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477. And you would enter the meeting ID 998-3388-8397. This information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting, which is on CTN channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. When you're there, you would select the government channel. Ms. DeLeo, we'll start with a roll call.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Mills.
Here.
Commissioner Milstein.
Here.
Commissioner Sove.
Here.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Here.
Commissioner Briggs.
Here.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Here.
Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. Item number 3 is introductions. Do we have any introductions this evening?
We do not this evening.
All right. Number 4 is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to move the agenda? Moved by Commissioner Briggs, seconded by Commissioner Milstein. I want to note that we did not get the minutes from the last meeting, and so we need to strike that from our agenda. Are there any other changes to make on the agenda? All right. All those in favor of the agenda as amended, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will move forward with this agenda as amended. So we will skip item 5, the minutes of the previous meeting, and go to 6, which is reports to the Planning Commission from City Administration, City Council, Planning Manager, Planning Commission officers and committees, and written communications. Start with Councilmember Ackerman. Do you have any report for us?
Yeah, just a small handful of items, 2 specifically related to the work of the commission. The first was with respect to the annexation and rezoning of 1780 Silo Church Road, which this body recommended to City Council unanimously. That did pass City Council. It's a small single family parcel of land that's annexed into the city. And then additionally, the sign ordinance was at second reading at City Council. City Council did vote to postpone that until the beginning of December based on a recommendation from the City Attorney's Office. There was recently a Circuit Court of Michigan ruling that will further dictate terms of signage in the state of Michigan. And so the City Attorney's Office is going to evaluate that and its impacts to the ordinance. So Mr. Leonard did indicate that he believes the changes will be such that it can stay away from the Planning Commission, and those amendments can be made by staff and presented directly back to City Council. But know that is in flux. Not commentary on your work whatsoever. Your work was exceptional. But yeah, there was a very recent court ruling affecting commercial signage. The other 2 updates that I think are adjacent to the work that we do. I know we all work hard to make sure that land use in the city of Ann Arbor makes for a more walkable, bikeable community. And one of the things that we've been experimenting with through the pandemic has been creating temporary or pilot bike lanes, protected bike lanes in different parts of the city. So City Council voted last night in a little bit of a surprise to end a portion of that program that affects 3 streets outside of downtown: South Main, Packard, and Broadway. So those protected bike lanes will be leaving the city. The ones downtown and in local neighborhoods will remain. And then finally, there was a lot of buzz around this, so I just wanted to close the loop. There were 2 members of City Council put forward a resolution that would start the process to dissolve the Downtown Development Authority. As you likely know, but for the benefit of the public, the Downtown Development Authority, or the DDA, is a taxing authority that's housed under the structure of the City of Ann Arbor that collects property taxes for new buildings that are constructed in the downtown district of Ann Arbor, and then concentrates the use of those taxes to improve the downtown. So infrastructure, programming to support local businesses, as well as now they're shifting their mission to focus more intentionally and almost exclusively on affordable housing. They also, through separate monies, manage our parking system. So they play a pretty vital role into the health and success of our downtown. And this was a pretty scary move that introduced a lot of uncertainty into the public. Fortunately, those 2 members of City Council, after a ton of public kind of outcry, removed that from the agenda. However, we did have a somewhat symbolic vote to release a memo from our city attorney that outlines some legal mechanisms by which the city could dissolve the DDA in the future. So a bizarre night, I will say, but yeah, we're getting through.
Thank you for that update and for all of the work that you do on council and for us. Ms. DeLeo, do you have any report for us?
Yes. First, can everyone nod if they can hear me? I switched my microphone. Great. I do want to alert everyone that our working session next week is going to be Wednesday and not the usual Tuesday. And I have some, I believe that Mr. Leonard would like to mention that there is a CIP progress update memo. And if you don't already have that yet, it's coming. And I believe there will be an update about the transportation plan shortly. So a little bit brief update, but that is my report.
Very good. Are there any other planning commissioners that sit on committees that they want to report out on? Commissioner Gibriandel.
I would just say it doesn't directly relate, though it did touch some of our work, is that the Environmental Commission put together a resolution last night at an emergency meeting to reject the consent judgment around the dioxane plume. And so we felt like we needed to do that prior to our next meeting. And so that just went out last night. And there's a whole lot of machinations that are going on right now all around that in terms of just the commission. I know that, again, some of our projects have touched that issue, and especially in regards to stormwater. So I just wanted to let you all know that happened last night.
Thank you very much. I will just note that the Ordinance Revisions Committee did meet. It was 2 Tuesdays ago because September was a crazy month of 5 Tuesdays. So we actually had a night off, those of us who are on a Tuesday off, those of us who are on the ORC. At that session, we talked about the C1A, C1AR guidance that we're supposed to be, a recommendation that we're supposed to respond to council with. At that time, Mr. Leonard had effectively a draft memo prepared that we gave a little bit of feedback, but I expect that we'll see that relatively soon. I think that the due date for that is the end of this year. So, and the other thing that we talked about was the site plan thresholds. Again, if there are types of low impact modifications that may not require full site plans. And so I think we gave some feedback, but a lot of this was that there's if you'll recall, the part of the resolution from council was to also have a group, an advisory group, largely from the development community that would help review that or provide some feedback. And so we had we suggested some things that we thought might be good questions to ask, and reviewed kind of what they were thinking about. So both of those things are moving forward. Anyone else? Okay. Item number 7 on the agenda is audience participation. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about an issue that is not listed as a public hearing on this agenda. So that is not about the 1290 Duvarin, the Owl Creek Annex Natural Features Plan Amendment, or the UDC Plan Project Amendments, or 3411 Gettys. So those are not things to talk about right now. Anything else is fair game. To comment on those other matters, please call 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477 and enter meeting ID 998-3388-8397. City staff will select callers that have digitally raised their hands, and you'll be called upon by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. In order to electronically raise your hand, you press *9 on your phone, and then you'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When you do speak, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or other background sounds so that we can hear you clearly. And please also make sure to state your name and address at the beginning of your comments, please. Ms. DeLeo, do we have anyone raising their hands to speak?
We do not. We have 3 callers. We do have one person raising their hand now. Okay. Hello, you have been unmuted. Please go ahead and address the Planning Commission.
I think she's still muted.
All right, hold on.
Ms. Preston, I think I'm not, if you're intending to speak at the public comment period, which is about items that are not on the agenda for tonight, you can, we can try to unmute you again. I think you can press *6. That actually, once you're promoted, you can, that's how you can unmute.
Okay.
You want to try one more time, Ms. DeLeo?
Yes. All right, so I've lowered all hands. So last time, if anyone would like to speak to the Planning Commission about something that is not on tonight's agenda, go ahead and press *9. That will digitally raise your hand. I'll see it and I can open up the phone line for you. Again, if you would like to speak, press *9. We have one more new caller, so I'll repeat the message one more time. If you have called in and would like to address the Planning Commission for a reason not on tonight's agenda, go ahead and press *9. That will digitally raise your hand and I will unmute you. If not, we will move forward with the regular part of the meeting. There will be another comment period at the end of the meeting.
And there'll be public hearings for each of the items that we'll take up tonight too. I don't see any digital hand raised, so I will close the audience participation and move on to this one. Like Ms. DeLeo mentioned, we'll have another opportunity at the end. And we will move on to item number 8, which is the public hearings for the next business meeting. Ms. DeLeo, do you have those for us?
I do. Oh, okay, bear with me 1 minute. I have a closed window that will open in a second.
Your air traffic controller when you are when we're in this digital version.
Wow.
So good.
Let's just be thankful I'm not actually flying a plane. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Public hearings will be held on Tuesday, October 20th at 7 p.m. for the following: 2775 Newport Road annexation and zoning for city council approval. a request to annex a 12.2 acre parcel from Ann Arbor Township and zone it R1A, single family dwelling district, for connection to city utilities and continued use by Rudolph Steiner School Association of Ann Arbor. Second, an amendment to a special exception use approval for Planning Commission approval. A request to amend the approved conditions of special exception use for marijuana provisioning center and marijuana retailer at 2385 East Ellsworth, project SEU 18-034, to extend the deadline to receive site plan and land division approval by 6 months. Third, Bright Dawn site plan for city council approval. A vacant 8-acre site located at 2805 Burton Road is currently zoned R4B, multiple family dwelling district. The petitioner is requesting to construct four-story buildings that include 120 dwelling units at market rate with parking garages located beneath each building. A community clubhouse is also proposed. Fifth, Unified Development Code, Floodplain Management Overlay District and regulations for City Council approval. An ordinance to amend sections 5.14.2, 5.18.4, 5.18.6D, 1A, 5.23.4, 5.27, 5.29.1, 5.29.3 F4, 5.29.12.D, and 5.37.2 of Chapter 55, the Unified Development Code of Title 5 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Those are the public hearings that will be held on Tuesday, October 20th.
Thank you very much. That'll be a meeting. That'll be a long, that's an agenda. All right. We're on to item number 9A, which is unfinished business. This is for the zoning of 1290 Duvarin Road, Gretchen's House, for city council approval. It's a request to zone a 2.52 acre parcel, R1A, it says, to allow a child care center, but I think that that's the thing that has changed since the last time. I think it's actually for R1D. So as usual, we'll start with the petitioner presentation, and I see Ms. DeLeo is working on moving the petitioners into the meeting. Then the staff presentation, and then we'll open the public hearing for those of you who are following along and may wish to comment on this.
While we're waiting for the petitioners to get on, just a reminder that as Sarah had indicated, we came to you on September 15th with an annexation zoning petition. The zoning portion was not advertised correctly. We had said R1A, which should have been R1D as in David. And so the petitioners are here with us now to describe it. And then I did put together a brief little PowerPoint that will include the zoning for this area.
Very good. So I'm not sure if there's a PowerPoint that goes along with the petitioner's presentation or not, but you have up to 10 minutes to tell us about the proposal.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm out in the country, so sometimes the audio isn't great.
It just got a lot better right there.
Oh, well, that's good. We spoke at your last meeting and had to delay this till this meeting, correct? Right. The thing that I wanted to make you aware of tonight was some of the feedback that Kathy Kindness with Macon Engineering and I have gotten from the city departments on this project, and it's a bit alarming for me. This is a 1,400 to 1,500 square foot house that we're hoping to use for this small child care annex to our larger center. down the road, particularly developing a nature playground for the children. Here are the things that I'm being right now asked to do. They're asking for 17 feet of additional right-of-way along Pontiac Trail. They also want additional right-of-way for construction of a roundabout at the intersection of Pontiac Trail and DuBarn, but they have not yet determined the amount of ROW that they need. They want 375 feet of public sidewalk along Pontiac Trail, 275 feet of public sidewalk along DuBarn, which is county property, crosswalk at the intersection with ramp on both sides of Pontiac Trail, street lighting at that crosswalk on both sides of Pontiac Trail, 15% electric vehicle capable spaces, the underground conduit, and 10% electrical vehicle ready spaces, conduit, electrical vehicle installed charging stations. They want increased pavement and driveway width for the trash trucks. And they want some unspecified at this time energy efficient improvements to the building and on-site solar power. This child care center is required to have 7 parking spaces. It's small. We will have 40 or fewer children in there. The items that I just mentioned are going to approach the cost of that property to me. I am thinking that if I am indeed asked to do all of this, that I may need to not annex to the city and sell the property. I don't understand. It's a small project, and I don't understand why I would be putting in street lighting for the city of Ann Arbor when probably when they do the roundabout, if they do, which they're supposedly planning to, it would just be torn out and redone. The electrical vehicle spaces, I mean, I understand that. You know, someone in my family has an electrical vehicle. We only have 7 spaces. You can hear my frustration. Is this what the Planning Commission believes is right and proper for this project?
Thank you very much. We'll get into our discussion. Is there anything else? I think there's a little bit of time. Is there anything else that you needed to add?
Only if Kathy had a comment that she would like to make. She's on the meeting. I can hear. I can see.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. I think Gretchen went through her list of the things that they had asked her to add. I think the one thing that she didn't mention was that they also want a 270-foot, 12-inch water main extension down DuVarn Road as well. But that would be the only thing I have to add.
All right. Very good.
By
Mr.
the way,
Khan.
they want that they wanted that all the way to the other side of my property, not the one closest to my Pontiac Trail, but to the other side. As well, just to let you know, I will be needing to put in a fire hydrant.
All right. Mr. Khan, you have a staff presentation, or you said you had some PowerPoints to share too.
Yeah, maybe Alexis can pull up the PowerPoint, and while she's doing that, I can describe my understanding of the story, just to sort of maybe broaden your understanding of the situation. The petitioner acquired this 2.5 acre property that was in Ann Arbor Township. It's in what we call a township island, and was interested in proposing a childcare center. So she submitted a petition for annexation, zoning, special exception use, and site plan approval. And so once the site plan was being reviewed by city staff, as is often the case, staff sees that as an opportunity to make requests to address the issues that they're regulating. And so I think Gretchen did a good job summarizing some of the lists or some, most of the items. I don't believe that there is a requirement for solar panels on the roof, and I don't believe there's any requirement for energy efficiency, but I think all the other ones were reflective of staff comments. Ms. Preston is going to have to decide whether to continue to pursue this or not. Just so you know, I'm in the process of setting up a meeting with our engineering group to discuss some of these major issues, which includes the dedication of right-of-way along Pontiac Trail, the potential dedication of additional land for a possible roundabout at that intersection of Duvarin and Pontiac Trail, as well as the fire hydrant and water extension. Those are all big ticket items. And so I hope to set that meeting up shortly. As I was hoping to set it up today, but hopefully I'll be able to set it up tomorrow. Before you tonight is a request for the zoning district, which you don't actually have to take action on tonight. The annexation portion came through on September 15th and you recommended approval. Our next step is to take that on to City Council, and then after that, send it to the state's Office of the Great Seal for them to make the final approval of the annexation. So the zoning is not a critical decision, although you're welcome to make any recommendation you would like. But my guess is that Ms. Preston is going to want to make a decision after she meets with city staff to see, whether there can be any movement on the part of city staff on the list that she presented tonight. Alexis brought up the PowerPoint. I can show you, if she scrolls down to the next slide, you can see the zoning map. And that map shows pretty well the large township island that—
I'm going to jump in for a minute if I can. Alexis, I don't know if you have two monitors. We're not seeing the full screen version. I see that it looks like you have it turned on, but we only see now we're seeing it. Okay. I mean, it's not in full screen, but at least we can see what he's talking about, and maybe reduce the size of the header. Or you can have it show the slideshow. You can choose the monitor that it views on if you go up to the top. Sadly, this happens to me on Zoom all the time, so I'm used to.
Alexis, I'm afraid you're muted.
Okay, bear with me. I'll figure it out. This is now an automatic thing, I got an automatic upgrade and I don't want it.
Send it back.
Better?
There was
Maybe?
no change. I think one of the you might choose a different screen to either where you just were with slideshow and then change where your full screen slideshow goes if you have two monitors. over on, oh, you don't have two monitors. It's not showing you up as two monitors.
I have 3. That's the problem.
Oh, usually right there where it says monitor, you can choose which one you
Yeah.
want it to show on. The other option is in the screen share. Sometimes you have an option of,
Here, let me try this. I hope I don't lose anyone. Okay.
Great.
There you go.
thank you. Sorry, Mr. Khan. I just wanted to make sure we were all looking at what you thought we were looking at.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to say is, regardless of what regardless of what you decide to do tonight, whether to recommend approval of the zoning or recommend a different zoning classification or postponing, it sounds like the bigger issue that Ms. Preston is facing is whether to continue with the project. She's able to pull the annexation prior to us moving it on to the state. So prior to going to city council. I just want to point that out. Getting back to the zoning map, you can see with the yellow outline the location of the site. It's at the southwest corner of Pontiac Trail and Duvarin. And pretty much all the parcels to the west, including parcels north of Duvarin Road, are still in the township. So this would be the first parcel in this cluster that would be annexed and zoned. This is the aerial photograph showing the location of these homes, as well as new development further to the south. That's North Sky immediately to the south. And there's a condominium project immediately to the east. And then just northeast of the project is Olson Park. And that's all I have in terms of the slideshow.
Thank you very much. Now we'll open the public hearing for this item. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the proposed zoning of 1290 Duvarin. Public comment can be made by calling 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477 and then entering meeting ID 998-3388-8397. City staff will select callers who've digitally raised their hand. You digitally raise your hand by pressing *9. You'll be called upon by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. And you'll hear an automated announcement when you're allowed to speak. When you do speak, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we can hear you clearly. And please also state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And it looks like we do have some folks on the line. Alexis, you're muted.
Thank you. Caller ending in 717. You. Caller ending in 717, please unmute yourself and feel free to address the Planning Commission for 3 minutes about 1290 Duvarin Road zoning.
And to unmute yourself, I think it's *6.
Okay. Caller ending, your last 3 digits are 717. You can unmute yourself. Try pressing *6. You can go ahead and speak at the public hearing.
Hello, my name is Daniel O'Connell. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hello, I live in 2936 Bateson Court. And my main concerns with this project are safety, because we face already safety concerns in this intersection. This intersection doesn't have sidewalks, and I'm concerned about all the additional traffic and pedestrian, especially kids, around this corner. And without sidewalks, this will be a potential hazard for everyone, for pedestrians and drivers. My second concern is that this road is during winter time becomes very hard to pass because it's usually one of the last that are cleaned by the township, and I'm concerned that this will bring extra hazard to the kids and to the neighborhood. In addition, this will bring also some complications with the city, because who will we be calling to clean this part of the street? Should be the city responsible to clean at only this spot, or are they going to be responsible to clean the full street? Finally, a lot of new developments have been approved, and this brings a lot of traffic. As you know, Pontiac Trail has increased in traffic, and trying to cross Pontiac Trail every day is harder. So those are my concerns about this project, and I really I don't see how one person who is looking to develop a business first buy a house trying to push their will through the city before checking all the requirements that they need to have to start a business. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Caller ending in 650. You are unmuted, and you can unmute yourself and address the Planning Commission for 3 minutes. Caller ending with phone number 650.
To be clear, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. You've been given the ability to speak, but there you go. Now you're not muted.
Hello, this is Michael Strother at 739 Duverne Road. And the first concern that I have, I'd like to see potentially the entrance to the project moved to Pontiac Trail. And my reasoning is basically the traffic concern. I can see in the future that potentially there could be as many as 60 children. And the queuing of traffic on our street here would be a nuisance, basically. The idea of having a roundabout actually sounds pretty good, because even today in the morning, it's very difficult to get out. I would comment that the street, in fact, at the end of the paved area is in fact very rutted. And as was previously said, that snow in the winter becomes a real challenge. I'd also like to say that the parking should be potentially located behind the house, because it's not really in character of the neighborhood to have a parking lot in the front yard of a house. There's also a ramp that is being proposed to run across the front of the house, and that ramp will change the character of the elevation. The site is very flat, so it will definitely be seen. There are trees that are being called to be removed, and I think that that's going to affect the welfare of the neighborhood. The street itself, Pontiac Trail, people come out of the city or into the city up over the freeway viaduct, and they're usually always speeding. So I think that the speed limit needs to be reduced, in fact, before the freeway to 35 miles per hour, and also should continue on out of the city at a maximum speed of 35. The other idea about leaving the entrance still on Duverne Road, if that is the case, then I would say that the area in front that is now gravel needs to be paved, and some of the other improvements that were mentioned in the city's recommendation, I would definitely agree with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It looks like there are a couple other callers on the line. If you're interested in speaking at the public hearing about the zoning for 1290 Duvarin, you can press *9 to raise your hand so that we can unmute you. Looks like there is one more person, Ms. DeLeo.
Caller ending in 808. You can unmute yourself, try pressing *6, and then you can, yep, you've done it. Now you can address the planning commission.
Thank you. Hello, this is Monique Strother. I live at 739 Duvarin Road. My concerns are about the character of the neighborhood and also the safety of the pedestrians and people in the neighborhood. Duvarin Road is a dirt road. There's lots of trees along the road. And on the site plan that I had seen, that a large number of the trees were to be removed from the front yard where the parking lot is proposed. So as you enter the neighborhood, you will enter seeing a parking lot there, and that's just not in keeping in the character. I would suggest perhaps a berm, a taller berm could be used to obscure the view a little bit. The area also has dark skies at night, so my concern about street pole lighting in a parking lot, again, is out of character. And if that did go forward, that the lighting could be turned off at the end of the business day so that the neighborhood could still have the dark skies. The safety of the pedestrians has already been raised. This is a road where a lot of people walk on with strollers. There are no sidewalks at the time. And so there would definitely need to be a path for the pedestrians, for sidewalks. School buses come down the road. I mean, it's like the people will need a place to go to. And I did like the idea of a roundabout or some type of crosswalk on Pontiac Trail. Traffic comes along that corner very fast, and it's hard to get across now, let alone with an additional, I don't know, 40 children a day. The traffic that would be resulting from that will make it harder for people living here to both enter in vehicles and on foot to the park. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's anyone else who would wish to address the Planning Commission on this petition, you can press *9 to digitally raise your hand so that we can allow you to speak.
Ms. Mills, the 3 phone-in callers each have already spoken, so I think that we can move on.
Super. Great. I will read the proposed motion. The Ann Arbor City Planning, so I'll close the public hearing, sorry, to make clear. The proposed motion is the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission hereby recommends that the mayor and city council approve the R1D single family dwelling district zoning of 1290 Duvarin Road. That motion is moved by Commissioner Milstein, seconded by Commissioner Hammerschmidt. We are now in discussion. Commissioner Milstein.
Thank you, Chair Mills. I have a question for staff. So we are only looking at zoning, not anything more than the zoning classification for this property. And so when and if this comes back to us, in order for the child care center to be opened at this location, we would have to come back for a special exemption use, which we would then get to see a site plan and a lot of other materials. So at this point, the most relevant part is, do we agree that the zoning is appropriate for this site? And there's nothing else that's being decided this evening. Is that correct?
That is correct and very well stated.
Okay, thank you. With that said, I understand Ms. Preston's frustration, and I hope that in the follow-up meeting with Mr. Khan and city engineering staff, they can come to some sort of a resolution if there's one to be found. So hopefully, Ms. Preston, you'll continue that conversation. Other than that, I do agree that this is appropriate zoning for the site. and I am in favor of it. Thank you.
Commissioner Gibrandel.
I'm curious, a question for staff. Did you all suggest the more dense zoning, or you all did that? Okay. And then is there, so if it were zoned R1A and stayed that way, would the same level of engineering be reviewed and asked for in this case, in terms of like a 12-inch water main going all the way up and all that sort of thing, that I can kind of understand that for a more dense development for an R1A. I'm just wondering about how much of this was brought on by the staff's desire to have it be zoned more densely rather than what the original petition was about.
It's my understanding that the zoning didn't affect any staff comments. That engineering would look for the right of way regardless of what the zoning is. They'd look for the hydrant. They'd look for paving. They would look for all those issues regardless of what the zoning district is.
So even if it were a single family home, they would ask for them to put in a fire hydrant and a 12-inch water main?
No. I do want to clarify this. If this were an individual who wanted to annex to the city in order to gain access to water or sanitary, and you just had an annexation zoning petition, it'd be very straightforward. There would be no site plan associated with it. What's triggered the comments was the fact that the petitioner submitted, in addition to the annexation zoning, a petition for special exception use with a site plan. That generated a whole list of staff requests. And so the annexation zoning is the first step, but the big story that you'll maybe get a chance to look at months from now will be the site plan and the special exception use.
So with our other special exemption uses, and we went through a whole lot of them in the last couple of years with all of our, marijuana provisioning facilities, I can remember one where there was an upgrade for a fire hydrant, but I don't remember anything with the level of utilities that are being asked for this. And so I'm just curious. And again, this is going to be something that's going to be discussed further along, but just in terms of our own experience, that just seems very out of the box of what we've done for other special exemption uses.
Right. I think your analysis is generally correct. All the other special exception uses that you guys have been dealing with, or at least almost all, were already in the city. They were already enveloped by city with city services. Yes, there was a petition on Liberty, on West Liberty that needed a hydrant. But many of those sites were already enveloped by public services. So they didn't have to construct a street or dedicate right of way or construct a new sidewalk because it already existed. This site, being in a township island, is different.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. I know, again, this will continue on, and I hope that the conversation is productive with city staff. From, again, super brief, we're not even looking at a site plan or anything like that. If the house isn't changing at all, it seems like a whole lot of upgrades. I can understand why she's thinking about bailing, basically, because that's an enormous amount of upgrades that would be on her to be able to basically not change the house and add 7 parking spots. So I understand totally that, we want sidewalks, we want all these things, but this one project just seems like a real pylon in terms of the amount of right of way that she's, the amount of land that she's kind of giving up in addition to all the other utilities. So I guess I just bring this up more as, in our own discussions, I think, around affordability and things like that. This is something that this is something that we should just have as another point in the discussion, I think, around that. Because and I get it that like those are generally expectations. It just seems like this one project is getting a whole lot on it for how little they are required to do in terms of the actual site development itself. So that's my 2 cents. And again, I hope that there'll be a productive conversation with the engineering department. But I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Commissioner Sauvé, then Commissioner Briggs, Commissioner Ackerman, maybe that was a hand too.
Add on to that, I'm not sure, about the petition's timing or the results of conversations right now, but ORC is talking about the tiered submissions. This is a special exception use, may or may not fall within those smaller tiers of requirements for smaller projects, but we are having those conversations right now. So just also highlight for commission as we talk about maybe site plan light and what that looks like, if special exception is included or not. I don't think that has been clear yet in our early conversations, but it does kind of bring to light with adaptive reuse and kind of what we're doing with infill and changing uses, that special exception might be a shift in the planned zoning, right? It's zoned residential and it's might not end up as that use. And so what the threshold is for asking for something, since we're getting something different than the zoned use. So I think there's a lot of variables at play, and that was a lot of what we saw with the special exception uses we have reviewed. Is this isn't the use for zoning, but there is some room for it to fit, and what's our threshold? I did have, a question about some of those. I think the one in terms of the list that was provided for updates, maybe this is for staff, is the light poles that are in the right of way. That I read it, those weren't for the parking lot per se, but they were in the right of way, where I understand sidewalks we typically do kind of see in a site plan, but I wasn't sure about public lighting. So can you clarify that that's something that that is a requirement for site plan?
I don't recall seeing that as a staff comment.
Okay.
Although maybe I missed it. Maybe Ms. Kyneth can enlighten us about where that comment came from.
Yeah, it came from the traffic and engineering, and the lighting is required for the crosswalk that's going to be required across Pontiac Trail. So they would be asking it to be lit, and that would require street lights on either side, one on the east side and one on the west side of Pontiac Trail.
Okay. And I guess the crosswalks too, those are, we just saw the one on South Main that it could open up for a street improvement project for crosswalks, but wasn't part of the development requirement. So I don't know if staff has clarification, or if maybe that's the next conversation that you have, but those two improvements did seem outside of the bounds of what we typically see and require, and if that was a request. So those were the two kind of that flagged for me as well. So
Commissioner Briggs.
Yeah, thanks. So one question with regards to the right-of-way, is that something that's typical that we might see in an annexation, is sort of a request for right-of-way, or is that atypical?
We would see that request as part of a site plan submittal, not necessarily an annexation zoning for a single family home.
Of course, right. But part of the site plan, that is.
Yep.
Typical. Okay. So, and I think that part of what's going on, obviously part of what's going on in this property is that this is a location that has dramatically shifted, and Ms. Preston is sort of in the midst of that development boom and taking a lot of the burden of it, I think, has been placed on this property. And there's some pieces that seem entirely appropriate, though challenging when you're on a corner lot like that, like the sidewalks seem entirely appropriate, though obviously I'm sure that is expensive for that corner lot. The right-of-way makes sense if that's something that, that can really, really improve that area. I was also surprised to hear about the street light And I'm not sure if I entirely understand what the water main costs are. I'm sure we'll understand that later. And this is the first project where we've also seen, I believe it's the first project where we've seen our EV new ordinance take effect. And so maybe we'll need to kind of weigh how that's working. But if I understood it correctly, it's 15%. So of that 7 spaces we're talking about, is that 1 space that we're talking about? Or I just want to make sure I'm understanding the numbers correctly.
Kathy is probably going to remember better than I do, but a charging station can provide a charge to 2 spaces, or it can provide a charge to 1 space, and conduit can be laid for a 2nd space in order to meet the requirement. Kathy may want to add to that.
I think that's accurate, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think we'll just have to keep evaluating if that is what we want with these smaller projects. I think we are trying to see it slowly come in. With regards to some of the comments that some of the other callers came in, I just wanted to, somebody mentioned dark skies. I would assume that I guess, Jeff, maybe you can clarify if this is accurate, but we haven't passed our new lighting ordinance yet. But depending on when everything comes, what the sequence is, it is possible that our new much more dark skies compliant lighting ordinance may be passed before a site plan might be submitted. Is that correct? Or has a site plan, because something has been, what's the sequence on that, I guess?
I honestly don't know, but I'm going to defer to Alexis, who may know more about the the status of the lighting ordinance.
I'll work to get a more firm update if I can, even in a moment. However, my last update was we slowed lighting just a little tiny bit, so that the first reading and second reading could be heard after the November election, so that the same council members would be dealing with both the first reading and the second reading. Let me try to verify that. So, which means that in a few months, an ordinance amendment takes a first reading and a second reading. So that means that around December 1st of the year, if an amendment is passed, that would take effect. And Jeff made it seem like the site plan is a little bit more than 2 or 3 months away. But neither, I think that they're variables to each one. I will also mention that it does not, the way our policies is that developments need to comply with the development that are in effect at the time of approval, not at the time of submittal. So I believe, so Jeff has probably been working with them on alerting them of potential changes. They're probably working on a plan A and a plan B specific to the dark sky lighting ordinance. It's probably a good idea to design to that anyway, because we're increasing the standards, not decreasing them. So they'll be compliant either way if they design to the new standard. But that's part of what we do as staff, is new projects will alert them to changes coming on the horizon and advise them which ordinance they should be designing to.
Thank you. So that would sort of, hopefully that it eases the concern potentially in terms of the timing of this, that part of that ordinance, should that be approved and take effect with this, is that parking lots should not be, right now we require them to be lit at night. In the new ordinance, we would recommend that they're not lit at night. And if they are lit, that it would be at a very low level of just safety lighting. So, and a lot of those other concerns would be brought up in the site plan process. But speaking to the issue right now, I support the annexation.
Any other comments? I think everyone covered most of the things that I had, but again, I'll like think about what the zoning district is. I think given that the master plan says single and two family dwellings, like calls for single and two family dwellings here, I looked just to see like what the difference would be in terms of the number of units, because we know, that we have a shortage of housing in the city of Ann Arbor. And in terms of my reading of the code, and correct me, Mr. Khan, if I'm wrong, is that in terms of density, this is very similar to actually like an R2 type district. Does that seem reasonable?
The minimum lot sizes for an R1D, as in David, is 5,000 square feet. It does allow for a greater diversity of housing types, including smaller lot homes, probably smaller homes, than it would if this site were to be zoned R1A, which has a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet. R1A almost always results in larger, more expensive homes. So this was a staff idea to create an opportunity for a more diverse variety of homes in the future, whenever this cluster of homes gets annexed. Again, that will take decades and decades and decades, as it takes time for folks to split property and all that.
I was curious just why an R1 recommendation rather than an R2, one of the R2 districts, which would allow for single families, but would also allow for single family residences, but would also give that flexibility for two family dwellings.
Right. We played around with a variety of concepts, including an R2 zoning district. I think it was felt that the single family use in this neighborhood has been there for decades, and that we wanted to continue that there is an R1D zoning district immediately to the south of this cluster. And like you had said initially, R1D does allow for compact housing types that can approach the density of an R2.
Okay. That's what I assumed. It's just good to hear the rationale behind that. The other question that I have then is this kind of special exception use that is being contemplated here, right? This is what the petitioner is interested in, would require the site plan, which everything that Commissioner Sauvé said about like this fitting into our discussion about what is required in site plan approval is exactly what ORC's been looking at, that City Council asked us to look at. So I think this is another good piece to, like she said, keep in mind for that in the future. This is for this particular special exception use, this is one that's allowed in an R1A just as well, as well as an R1D. So, so this, what the petitioner is interested in could work in either situation. I'm curious about what the ramifications are for at the site plan level for a special exception use. Like if it's zoned as R1D, does this, in terms of the placement of that special exception use, how is that different than if it were in R1A? Just because, again, what we do now will hold a future site plan to those recommendations.
I'll give you my response, and then I'm going to ask Alexis if she wants to add to that. From our perspective, special exception use is required of a child care center in a single family neighborhood. And so from my lens, it would not matter whether the site is zone R1D or R1A. I'm going to ask Alexis to join the conversation to see if she has anything else to add.
I would agree with Jeff. I think that there are no criteria, there's no gradation to which single family zone or two family zone for that matter. The special exception use standards speak more to the actual address, not to the underlying zoning designation. So go ahead. Okay, so for example, regardless of its, as long as it's eligible, as long as special exception use can be entertained, then the questions move to more about the address. How is the traffic to this particular address? I'm going off the top of my head for the approval standards, but how's the traffic to this particular standard? What's the compatibility of this address to its neighbors? Not so much, is it R1D versus R1A?
But the location of the parking lot, the setback from, both in terms of like front of the building, side of the building, does that make a difference if it were R1A versus R1D?
I'm going to say the location, no. Perhaps the setbacks. R1A has greater setbacks than R1D. But just, do you pick north, east, south, or west? That has no bearing depending on that level, R1A, B, C, or D. Picking the location doesn't matter about the zoning designation. The setbacks do matter, the actual distance, I should say, but not whether it goes north or west.
Got it. And remind me, because you are the code guru, I know that our setbacks are about the buildings, right? But the parking infrastructure, how does that work?
Parking cannot be forward of a building. Parking must be equal to or behind a building. But there is an exception for a corner lot. A corner lot has an exception for one of the two sides. I'm not as familiar with the potential layout as Jeff is, but I would say that just we're talking greenfield situation. Like I said, I'm not as familiar with the existing conditions. The building goes in, the parking needs to go to the side or the rear of the building. And so that would be, but there will be one of the two sides, and we don't say which one. One of the two sides can be exempt, meaning the parking can go in front of the building for one because it's a corner lot.
And it doesn't make a difference what the setback is in that case, because we're not talking, it's allowed to be in the side yard setback, right?
But not in the front. So for this case, on both sides, if it's R1D, it's 25-foot setback. In all cases, it's going to have to be at least 25 feet back. If the building is right at 25 feet, the parking can go in line with it. So it's a matter of perspective. But it cannot be more than 25. If R1D cannot be more than 25 feet from the right-of-way line.
Okay.
Which is the front of the property line.
Got it. I mean, so from my perspective, if you guys didn't like pick up on this, it's, I know we're not dealing with site plans right now, but because that's one of the concerns of neighbors, I want to make sure that like us doing something that is more in keeping with master plan, but not what the petitioner asked for, isn't going to shoot ourselves in the foot in the future, in that the things that neighbors care about is harmful. And so it sounds to me like it's not. Admittedly, if there was a change to the structure, that structure then in the R1D that staff is recommending here could be closer to a property line than in an R1A, which is what the petitioner initially asked for. But I think really it seems like the concern is around parking, which understandably, like that's different. Single family homes don't have parking lots. And so I just wanted to make sure that we weren't shooting ourselves there. And is there a conflicting land use buffer that's required in a special exception use that includes a part like this?
A conflicting land use buffer would be a requirement of a site plan, the site plan portion of a special exception use site plan. And we have requirements that sides and rears of multifamily projects have a conflicting land use buffer. We require it when a parking lot abuts a neighboring property, and we require it if a dumpster abuts a neighboring property, and that would be a 15-foot buffer.
Got it. And that's just about the use. It doesn't make a difference whether it's, again, R1A or R1D.
Correct.
Okay. So the fact that this special exception use would require a site plan is going to ensure that there's a conflicting land use buffer regardless of how we zone it.
If one is required.
If one is required. Got it. Okay. Well, then from my perspective, I think that this is an appropriate zoning, that, you know, I appreciate that it allows for a form of development that would, provide some additional options in the city. And whether, Ms. Preston, you're able to move forward with this, if it makes sense to have this piece of property annexed, bringing to our attention all of that, I think is really helpful as we think about everything that we do has an impact on, on future development. So I think that that's really helpful. And this is kind of the confluence of a whole bunch of things, as Commissioner Briggs said. A corner lot annexed into the city because the kind of standards in the township are not the same as the city standards in terms of required sidewalks and all of that kind of thing. So, I'm sorry on behalf of, just for all of that this was the perfect storm of things. But thank you for bringing it to our attention. And from my perspective, it makes sense. I know staff, you recommend, or you said that we don't have to act on this tonight. And a lot of this is tied up. From our perspective, is there any problem if we are ready to vote on the zoning? That doesn't tie anyone's hands to anything.
No,
is that true?
No, city council cannot take action on the zoning until after annexation. And that may be months and months and months down the line. So it would not encumber, your recommendation is just that, it's a recommendation. So you could certainly take action tonight, and it would not inhibit the ability of the petitioner to withdraw her petition sometime in the future.
Then my sense is, while we're talking about it and it's fresh on our mind, it makes sense to vote unless anyone feels differently. Commissioner Briggs.
I just wanted to add one extra thing that I didn't mention that I was surprised about. When Mr. Khan, when you're having the conversation with engineering, it seems for this scale of project, I'm surprised to see the requirement for the petitioner having to provide the crosswalk at that location and the street lighting. I think those are absolutely necessary there. They're great. I think they're essential, especially given the use. But I think a lot of the factors of why they're necessary aren't necessarily don't relate to this property as much as what's happened along that corridor previously. So my 2 cents.
Any other commissioners? All right, Ms. DeLeo, I think we're ready. We do roll call votes, so if you could call us, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Sauve.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt. I read lips. It said yes. Commissioner Briggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Yes.
And Commissioner Milstein.
Yes.
It is unanimous with 7 votes.
Very good. Thank you. Our next item of business is 10A. We are in new business now. This is the annex site plan for Planning Commission approval. It's at 3380 Nixon Road. And Ms. DeLeo is moving people in and out, but I'll just remind everyone that, again, we'll have a petitioner presentation for up to 10 minutes. And then, Mr. Khan, you're giving the staff presentation?
Yep.
Excellent. And then we'll open it for a public hearing.
Great.
So petitioners, whenever you are ready to address us, we'll start the 10-minute clock.
Hello, am I unmuted?
You are.
I will even give you some video. Good to see you, planning commissioners. I haven't seen you in a while. You guys all look well. We are here tonight before you for a site plan amendment for Planning Commission approval for the removal of a natural resource. We had removed a landmark tree basically due to bad communication, but it had to go due to life safety issues. There was a tree that was located on the corner of the south driveway of the annex apartment complex, and it was located literally right on the right-of-way line. It was a 17-inch oak that had a canopy spread of probably about, I would guess at least 30 feet in diameter. I received a call one day from the site superintendent, and he said that the trade workers were complaining that they couldn't see when they were leaving the site. And so I said, this was 2 years ago. I said, well, send me a picture, let me see what it looks like. And he sent me a picture an hour or two later. I looked at it, I said, yeah, that's probably got to go. And that was the email. And I sent the email to Jeff Kahn, he saw it, and after that, that was the last I thought about it for about 2 years. That gave him the green light to remove the tree. I never thought about exactly the ramifications of it. I didn't know that it was even a landmark tree, to be honest with you. But it got taken down. And if you see the pictures of it, and sometime Jeff or Alexis, you can enable me, I can try to bring up the pictures of the tree, and you probably would agree with what I say.
It's in the PowerPoint.
Okay, you got it? Cool. All right. So anyhow, the long and short of it is the tree got removed. We mitigated for the tree. I believe they required the mitigation of about 12 new trees. I'm confident that anybody from transportation or engineering would have looked at it and said yes, that tree needs to go. That was not that is not in the public welfare and good health and safety for residents going in and out of there. So so we went through the process. We provided the trees, and we hopefully you agree with us, because we really can't replace the tree, to be honest with you.
All right. Very good. Mr. Khan, do you want to fill in more?
Just a couple things to add while Alexis is pulling up the PowerPoint presentation. As I think most of you know, we have a mechanism that results in a petitioner needing to provide an extra number of replacement trees if the tree is removed, or if the natural feature is removed during construction. We came before you with a separate project at 950 Green with a similar circumstance that needed to replace 2 landmark trees there. And so this is part of that mechanism where the petitioner has submitted a site plan for Planning Commission and agreed to provide the 14 replacement trees, half of which would be red maple, half of which would be red oak. The site is already heavily planted with trees, particularly up at the front or the western side of the site. And so the petitioner worked with our land development coordinator, Tiffany Jacobazi, who is joining us today for the conversation on the site location of these new trees. And if it's not my mistake, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the trees have already been planted. So let's go through the slides, and you can see the first slide will show the photograph from a pickup truck or a vehicle looking to the south as they're leaving the site, exiting onto Nixon Road. And as you look to the south, there's a large white oak, I believe, that is encumbering some of the views. I think some of the views are also encumbered by what might have been the retaining wall there. But that gives you a sense about where the tree was located. The next slide should show where some of the replacement trees are provided. You can see that there are 5 replacement trees shown on this sheet. You can see there's a pretty extensive number of trees planted throughout the site. It's kind of hard to find a place to locate new trees. And so you can see in yellow the location of 5 of the new trees. And then we can move to the next slide, which illustrates the northern portion of the site. And that's where 9 trees got located at the far northeast corner of the site, which gets close to the parkland that was dedicated as part of the project. So I'll pause there and see if Tiffany Jacobazzi wanted to add anything to the conversation.
Hello, all. I don't think I've met many of you before, but thank you for having me here. The trees, replacement trees all went in. We did request, Alexis, if you can go back to the previous slide. Thank you. There was a request from staff to the petitioner to put at least 2 of the trees in the right-of-way, since the tree that they took was a city tree in the right-of-way. I would argue, after looking at the photo, that had any of their staff reached out to the city forestry department, that tree could have been pruned and elevated. We have many, many large trees along our streets, and that's one of the reasons we do clearance trims along the road. So moving forward, I would always suggest you reach out to city forestry prior to agreeing to remove one of our trees without our knowledge. But they have mitigated per our code requirements. They are native trees. They are oaks. I was okay with the maples going in on the site as well. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much. We will now open the public hearing for this item. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the proposed natural features plan amendment for the annex. Public comment may be made by calling 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477, and then entering the meeting ID, which is 998-3388-8397. As before, city staff will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number after you have digitally raised your hand, which you can do by pressing *9. Please move to a quiet area, mute any background noise, or mute your TV and do your best with the background noise. And please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. So it looks like there is someone on the telephone. If the person who has called in wants to speak on this, for this public hearing, again, you can digitally raise your hand by pressing *9. I'm not seeing anything. So I will go ahead and close the public hearing and read the motion. The motion reads, the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission hereby approves the annex site plan for Planning Commission, updating the natural features mitigation plan and the landscaping plan. That motion is moved by Commissioner Milstein, seconded by Commissioner Sauvé. We are now in discussion of this. Commissioner Gibrandel and then Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
I'm a little confused about the tree that came down, because it says in the report that it's a 17-inch tree, but then described it as about 30 inches. And so I'm just curious what gives there? Because isn't there a 200% replacement when you take a tree out of?
Am I live? Yes, I think I am. Yeah. Shannon, I said about a 30-foot diameter of the drip line, not 30-inch.
Okay, okay. So it was a 17-inch because it looks big in the photo.
Correct. It was a bushy. It was kind of a bushy oak. I mean,
So it had suckers and things like that.
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I would just echo, and Tiffany, I'm not going to get your last name right. So I'm not going to even try.
I'm glad she said it. I'm glad she's actually spoken. I didn't know how to pronounce it.
I would just echo that as well, because it looked like a beautiful tree, and it's it takes a long time for those other trees to get to that point. And it seemed like, it seemed like with some selective pruning, it could have been worked around, because again, not only are they through the city, but they're all through the county as well, those big trees. So, it is what it is. It's done. And I think the replacement trees seem fine. It would have been nice if there were white oaks, but you can't always get everything you want in terms of what's available and stuff like that. So I just wanted some clarification on the size, because I was a little confused by that. So
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Thanks. Yeah, I wrote down, like, could it have been trimmed when I saw the photo? So thank you for that preemptive answer. Ms. Jacobazi. Is that, yeah, I have people don't even like to try my last name either, so I get it. My main comment / question would be, something clearly broke down in a process somewhere that this happened. And I don't know if there's something, I mean, not that we have to discuss this tonight, but like, where was the miscommunication? Like, where like the petitioner, I'm guessing, didn't know that he needed to call forestry. Just like, is there something that we need to fix in the process to make sure that this doesn't happen again? I don't know who should answer the question, if it's staff or the petitioner. I guess whoever has an opinion.
So if you don't mind, I'll answer that. I got a call like at about 9 o'clock in the morning, some Wednesday or Thursday, when I was busy doing something, from the superintendent of the construction site. And he told me like that people were complaining about they can't see to get out. I asked him to send me a picture, and he said, okay, I will. I said, like, if it's blocking sight distance, we're going to probably have to do something about it. So he sent me a picture. Like about 2 hours later, I sent him an email back that literally said, like, yeah, it's probably got to go. And like, that's all I did. I forgot about it. I went back to work on whatever I was interrupted doing. And like, I didn't think about it again for 2 years until Tiffany found it. So it was just one of those things that happens. I mean, like, to be very honest with you, like, we have the retaining wall that, I don't know if you remember seeing the retaining wall in the picture. The retaining wall was slated on the approved site plan to be removed. So removing the retaining wall meant you had to grade back, like, that was about, the retaining wall held back about 3 feet of earth or so. So that meant you had to grade that back. That would have like killed, that alone would have killed the tree doing that. So it was a combination of looking at a plan, and things that look flat on a plan aren't exactly how they look out in the real world. It's just kind of one of those things that happens. So
Yeah, no, I mean, totally appreciate that. I guess I'm just saying, if from a staff's perspective, there is anything that could have, I don't know, if there's anything that we need to make sure in a process moving forward is changed for like better clarification.
I think that was directed to staff. So, Ms. Jacobazi?
Sure.
No, say how it's said. Help me.
Pretty close. Jacobazi.
Jacobazi. Got it. Jacobazi.
Yes. Okay. So right now, they are told, and it's on the site plan, that they're not allowed to remove anything that's not slated for removal on the landscape plan, on the removals plan. If when they get in the field, they find something that needs to change, they're supposed to approach either their planner or me and let us know. And we would have told them, this is a natural feature. This means you have to go back to council. There are other times when something comes up and it's not a protected natural feature, and it's something that can be, it's a small tree, and they can replace it at size. It's not a big deal. I don't know that has changed since I took over a year and a half ago. The tree was long gone prior to me being here, and Carrie had been here for a long time, and Carrie certainly would have told them if she had been knowledge of it, that this tree was slated to be removed.
Okay, it sounds like it might have been just a miscommunication there that resulted in the removal.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Briggs.
Yeah, I'm curious, are there, so this is the second time kind of recently that we've heard of this. Is mitigation greater when this happens after the fact than before? I'm sure I've been told this before.
Yes, so mitigation is 200%.
And what is it before?
50%.
I think I would be willing to entertain more, honestly. And honestly, Mr. Betzold, I am pretty frustrated with your pretty cavalier attitude as you're coming to Planning Commission, sort of laughing and acting like this isn't really that big of a deal. I mean, you've worked with the city quite a bit, and I'm sorry to give you a little bit of a reprimand here, but you know, it feels at this point that you might know our city processes a little bit better than this, and to kind of come in laughing like it's not a big deal. I mean, you know our city's values pretty well at this point, that we are a tree city and this is something that we care about. So I would hope that moving forward, you'd be very aware of this issue. You know, I would certainly entertain increasing this if this is something that we're seeing more often, because you know, and also it doesn't necessarily have to be on site. I think I've heard that kind of struggling in the last one too, trying to squeeze in trees in an area where it didn't necessarily work, but it feels like there might be if we increase it, we'll get some of those trees elsewhere. So folks don't forget about our city values.
Any other planning commissioners have comments? And I would just add, this may be something that comes up in commission proposed business. In terms of looking at what that multiplier is, I would also say that this is a testament to our staff and their oversight, right? I mean, I certainly don't hope that this happens a lot, but the fact that we've seen 2 of these things in the last year or so, I think means that like the staff is looking at those plans and making sure that the development that we approve or that we recommend for approval before us, that council actually approves, like that's what we get. And so I just want to compliment staff for being diligent and like making sure that the things that, you know, the plans that come before the public hearings that go through this process are what we end up with. So thank you.
Commissioner Briggs, I would like to add, like, I'm not being cavalier. I'm just trying to explain to you that this actually, like, if transportation would have seen this, they would have told us to remove it. We try to, it's hard in Zoom because you can unmute yourself, but we try to effectively follow the same policy that we follow when we're in council chambers. So we follow those policies. So is there anyone else on Planning Commission that has anything that they want to add before we vote? All right, Ms. DeLeo, could we have a roll call vote on this, please?
Thank you. Sorry for the unmute delay. Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Sauvé.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Briggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Yes.
Commissioner Milstein.
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Yes.
It passes unanimously with 7 votes.
Very good. And this is something where it doesn't go on. This is the final say. That doesn't happen very often, people, so celebrate it when it does. And I'm sure the petitioners celebrate too, that they don't have to do this all over again. So, okay, the next item, new business, is 10B, which is proposed amendments to Chapter 55, which is our UDC, Unified Development Code. Section 5.30.1, planned project site plan modifications for city council approval. There is no petitioner in this because this is something that we have brought up amongst our ranks. So we'll start with Ms. DeLeo's presentation, and then we'll have the public hearing.
Thank you. All right, bear with me for some technology and screen hygiene. I noticed that in the packet, when things were converted to a PDF, that the track changes did not come through. So I am prepared in a moment to share the Word document so that we can see that those markings. Now, yeah, thank you. All right. This tonight are proposed amendments to the UDC that to delete section 530.1 planned project site plan modification and add 3 new paragraphs offering flexibility to setbacks in multifamily, residential, mixed use, and non-residential special purpose districts, to give exceptions to height limits for sustainable and affordable housing developments, and parking waivers for sustainable and affordable housing developments. The amendments are intended to replicate the majority of benefits offered and realized by the current planned project modifications, but in a less complicated, more straightforward, predictable, and intuitive manner. I'll give a little bit of background for anyone who has not been following along. The planned project site plan modifications have been part of the zoning in all of its titles for a long time, since the 70s at least. They provide an added degree of flexibility in the placement, design, and interrelationship of buildings within a site plan development. You are allowed to modify the area, height, and placement, and design, and lot sizes. You are not allowed to modify the floor area ratios or the densities, but when it says area, height, and placement, it means the setbacks, the height, and the other dimensional standards. Now, the modifications are considered when developments provide one of at least 9 features, and those are listed in the ordinance. Quick summary is if a development provides open space or increased setbacks, preserving natural features, preserving architectural features, solar orientation, arrangement of buildings with a beneficial design, affordable housing, permanent conservation easements, or maximizing the downtown design guidelines. Now, the modifications have no limitations. The increase in height limit is unlimited to be considered, for example. And there are no, the City Council and Planning Commission can accept or deny any degree of those open spaces or those benefits in exchange for the currently unlimited area, height, and placement modifications. Because of these ambiguities in equating the modifications from the normal standards to the proportional value of the beneficial effects, and the list of features is becoming quite outdated, the Planning Commission initiated a review and asked for recommendations about how these could change. We have been working on these off and on for this year. A little bit of a delay because of the pandemic, but we have progressed forward. And we have come to this point after working with the Planning Commission in some working sessions, working a lot with the Ordinance Revisions Committee on refinements. We've zigged and zagged right and left, upwards and backwards, and here we are. We have focused on what were the fundamental intent and the basic goals of planned project modifications. And the Ordinance Revisions Committee and the working session, and the Planning Commission at a working session reaffirmed that there should be a way for projects to have a path for some increased height and some flexibility and setbacks, which are the two most used modifications, outside of the PUD or the variance process. But in looking at all the things you can modify, we came to the conclusion that it's height and setbacks. That's really, that's the most used and the most valuable. And then the reasons why this flexibility is important and should be entertained is sustainability and affordable housing. So the approach that we are proposing for the Planning Commission is retaining the most useful and used flexibility options and offering them in a very defined, discrete, clear method. First, in section 519.3, and now I will screen share without too much ado. Okay. In the area, or I'm sorry, in the additional area height and placement standards section, which is 519.3, we propose to offer some setback flexibility for mixed use and non-residential special purpose zoning districts. In the version here, you can see that there is a 518.3C. Number 1 is actually what is already in code. This is now in table 517 in a footnote. We are proposing to move it here for uniformity. What we are proposing is to add paragraph 2 and offer for the mixed use and non-residential special purpose districts that required setbacks can be increased or decreased by up to 50%, provided that the cumulative required setback area is provided on the lot. So we are, visually speaking, we are allowing the building envelope to move like this, to move like that. The second way that we are proposing to modify the plan projects is in section 518.4, in exception to height limits, adding another paragraph, C, for sustainable and affordable housing developments. A 30% height increase would be offered for developments that either have significant sustainability, which we have defined here, or affordable housing. Significant sustainability is developments with solar panels that cover at least 30% of the building footprint and the ability to be fully electrified. Affordable housing developments are where 15% of the dwelling units or floor area are affordable housing units. In the staff report, we've provided a table of exactly which districts would increase by what. What is the 30% increase? The exception to height limits narrows the current plan project modifications to focus solely on height and clearly defines the necessary qualities for these exceptions. A building step back is required when within 300 feet of any residential district, and that's borrowed from a similar height limitation in the office district. And that further mitigates any impacts of the increased height beyond our 30% cap. Again, our current plan project modifications don't have a cap. They also don't require any mitigating effects. And finally, in the spirit of the plan project modifications, we're introducing a new component, and that is to waive the car storage aspect of the off-street parking requirements. I have it mocked up here. Section 519.6 would be a new section in the off-street parking article for a sustainable and affordable housing development waiver. The parking requirements may be waived as part of a site plan with the following conditions. Again, the same definitions of sustainable development or affordable housing development. The minimum bicycle parking spaces would still be required. And within the DDA, you'll still need to address curbside management provisions. Outside of the DDA, you'll need to provide drop-off and delivery space as part of your development still. The Ordinance Revisions Committee, and particularly the Planning Commission at their more recent working session, had some concerns on that early draft. And I'd like to update the Planning Commission by saying that the staff, we reassessed our 30% height increase metric, and we still find that it's, we're comfortable with that proposal. The discussion was maybe it should it be increased or decreased? The 30% height limit still provides a meaningful increase for the lower scale districts. Anything less than 30% might not get them, might not be truly offering flexibility. It would probably be a name only. They couldn't get an additional story with anything other than about 30%. The Planning Commission could consider, if this is a sticking point for you, we can consider maybe a do not exceed provision, maybe 30 or 40 feet. So keeping the 30%, but saying 30%, but no more than 40 feet. And that would still enable the lower height districts to have a meaningful increase and actually providing them with some flexibility, but moderating the higher height districts. Also, an earlier draft proposed 30% coverage of a building footprint. We have increased this in the draft to 60% after talking to the Office of Sustainability and Innovation. You may notice that also the previously proposed setback modifications have changed to just setback line and yard alternatives without the need for sustainability or affordable housing. And this we are offering in response to the concerns that this sustainability and affordable housing may be a little bit of a high threshold for something where you're not getting anything additional. We are offering an ability to move, but we are not saying you get more setback or less setback. So we removed the sustainability and affordable housing requirement. And again, this is basically mimicking and mirroring what residential, multifamily residential projects can already do. Not too many do it, but it is there. It is an option. And it's a literal flexibility. We have started some engagement with the development community, generally positive. I did want to point out and emphasize a little bit though, that it is the city's discretion to offer any flexibility from our strict conformance. You know, the purpose of zoning is to provide uniform regulations that are very predictable. These reimagined modifications, we're not trying to encourage a particular land use. You know, we're not trying to encourage a taller building or something like that. The way we encourage particular things by giving a true bonus with FARs through premiums or something like that. Also, we shouldn't be trying to fix hardships or just bad code. The modifications are just meant to be acceptable deviations that give a little flexibility, but we are not trying to undermine our basic zoning premise of uniformity, consistency, fairness, and fairness. I will make a final note that our approach, though, to the setback line and yard alternatives, there's a clear relationship when you are decreasing setback lines. I'll go back in the screen share. Saying that the setbacks can be increased or decreased up to 50% of the distance required, provided the cumulative setback is provided. So if you want to decrease it, you're moving it, you know, maybe instead of 10 feet, you're moving it 5 feet front setback. So we're pulling the whole development closer to the street. There's going to be a little bit increased rear setback. There's a sort of a clear relationship there. There is not as clear offsetting benefit when you are talking about increasing the setback line. If you push a rear setback, make it 50% greater, discussion purposes, going from 10 to 15%. The building may not necessarily get closer to the front. Also, if you make a front setback greater, we may be going in the opposite direction of where we want the buildings to go, farther away from the sidewalk. The reasons why you might want to push a building back from the sidewalk, maybe save a landmark tree, maybe align a sidewalk or something better. But perhaps we have other tools already that can help with that. It's more food for thought for the Planning Commission. We just want to make you aware of all the impacts and consequences. But overall, we feel that the contemplated replacement of this plan project section with the new subsections represents the most useful current provisions that we have, and it achieves the most valuable features of the plan project modifications, but in a clear, more definitive manner. We took a little time to get here, but I think this is an example of how zoning regulations can be simplified while still maintaining the overall purpose of zoning. We did recommend postponing. I would encourage you to sort of validate our approach. Let us know if we've hit the mark, what might need further consideration or changing. But part of the reason to postpone is that the ordinance document is not quite comprehensive enough for prime time. It needs to actually show where the footnote is being moved from. We need to actually show a document where we are deleting section 530.1. And we'll need to insert some sort of administrative procedures for recognizing previously approved site plans that as conforming projects. And allow something for them to maybe be amended through the administrative process, but then requiring conformance if they're doing a wholesale redevelopment. So as always, I am here to answer any additional questions, troubleshoot, and discuss after the public hearing. And again, welcome any and all feedback from the Planning Commission.
Thank you very much.
Stop the share and check.
All right. I will, thank you very much, Ms. DeLeo. I will read that this is now the time for the public hearing for this item. Persons can have up to 3 minutes to talk about the proposed amendments to the planned project modifications to Chapter 55, the Unified Development Code. Public comment can be made by calling 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477 and then entering meeting ID 998-3388-8397. City staff will select callers who've raised their hand digitally by pressing *9 and will call on you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. Please move to a quiet area, mute background noise, or mute TVs, minimize background noise, and please state your name and address for the record. And Mr. Leo's already promoted our first taker, so.
Yes, caller with phone number ending 134. You are live and may address the Planning Commission for 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Leo and Chair Mills. This is Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. I'm coming late to this discussion, but I can appreciate all the work that has gone into these new plan project modifications. I really commend Commission and staff for all your efforts. But there's one paragraph that jumped out at me when I looked at this staff report. That's section 518 4C1, the definition of a sustainable development, which makes a project eligible for the additional building height. The 60% of the building footprint dedicated to solar is appropriate, but we should also require full building electrification to meet this definition. The draft ordinance does require conduit and other infrastructure for future conversion, but realistically, once the gas boilers, furnaces, chillers, and ductwork are in, they're really not going to be removed during the life of the building. And a VRF heat pump system only makes sense economically if it's installed during construction. Such buildings are technically and economically feasible here in Michigan, as Commission has seen with the Valhalla, Glen, and Viridian projects. The new VRF systems from vendors like Mitsubishi work well in our climate and are highly efficient. Now, will it cost developers more than for the standard gas-fired boilers and ductwork? There may be a slight difference, but that difference would certainly be less than adding the required solar panels. Regarding utility costs, you'll recall that the Valhalla development team, when you asked them about this back in June, did expect a slight increase in operating costs, but said that resident utility bills would not go up, largely because of the solar capacity. To quote Eric Doyle from the Valhalla team at the 2-hour, 56-minute point of the meeting video, quote, "The cost that the tenant would actually be paying would be comparable. Probably it would be less, is my hunch," end quote. So I do not believe building electrification sets a high threshold at all. And given the climate crisis, the only reason I can think of for any new development to use fossil fuels is because the developer has no experience with VRF systems and doesn't understand them. That is not a good reason. And as you know, the 820 plan in Strategy 2, Action 1, specifies the following goal, quote, "All new residential and commercial buildings are designed and built to operate without the use of natural gas, reducing the increased costs associated with retrofitting existing systems," end quote. Many other cities do in fact mandate that all new construction be all electric, not just planned projects. Cities like San Jose, California, and Brookline, Massachusetts. The very least we can do is to mandate electrification of the planned projects that seek extra building height. So that's section 518. I have the same comment for what I assume is a section 519 sustainable housing definition, which I couldn't read in the staff report PDF. That's it. Thanks for considering this.
Thank you very much. It doesn't look like there's anyone else on the line. If you are watching on CTN, the numbers are up on the bottom of your screen. But I don't know that we're going to get any callers, so I will close the public hearing and read the proposed motion. The Ann Arbor City Planning Commission hereby recommends that the mayor and city council approve the, yes. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm on the right thing. Yes. Approve the August 2nd, 2019 drafted amendments. Is that the right motion? That's not quite right. Sorry, just a minute.
Well, you're reading it correctly. The date is a head scratcher, but maybe it doesn't matter if the commission follows through with postponing.
Right. This is from the last time we had premiums because it's about affordable dwelling units in downtown districts. Sorry, my script is a little off.
Yeah, I see that as well.
And I don't even think that this, I can, yes, even the staff report is the same. So hereby recommends that the mayor and city council approve the drafted amendments to Chapter 55 Unified Development Code with regards to plan project modifications.
Done.
And because I expect a motion to postpone, that will be edited. Moved by Commissioner Ackerman, seconded by Commissioner Milstein. Commissioner Ackerman.
First, I just want to say thank you. I think this is one of the more impactful things that this body has gotten to work on. It's one of those things that's in the weeds of the zoning code, but is super applicable to a lot of different scenarios. And in the state of Michigan, we're really hamstrung to do good and progressive things by state law. And this finds a workaround that is both legal, but also pushes our values. And I'm really grateful for the RC for the work that it took to do this, and to Ms. DeLeo for all of the many hours of work that happened behind the scenes to really bring it to life. So I just wanted to say a really big thank you. Hopefully one of the final things that I'll get to work on. And I guess Commissioner Briggs on the Planning Commission as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments, affirmations that Ms. DeLeo should clean things up and it should move forward? Questions? Commissioner Sauvé.
I was going to leave room because I do talk about this a lot on the ORC, but yeah, I think clarification on the extent of parking waivers, since it does kind of leave it open-ended that you can almost like exempt parking is how I read it completely. And if there are tiers to it or something, like just making that really kind of clear in staff report what the waiver is, so everyone's aware of it. Because if you're doing a planned project, you meet sustainability goals and you can eliminate 100 parking spots. What does that mean in like one extreme of the scenarios? And another scenario could be 2 parking spots is all that's required, or 7 parking spots for a daycare. And you could plan project and then you could just put some solar panels and do some things and it makes it easier, which goes to my next point about the sustainability, because this could be a moment for a planned project site plan for something like the daycare, that it's an existing building, looking for a waiver for parking, doing a full electrification of an existing building to get that parking waiver isn't a cost-effective option. So making that a requirement, that was something that we did look at ORC. It was kind of one of those core requirements in the messy middle ground of a version of this. There was a core requirement of electrification and then a matrix of if you got this, you would do that sort of thing. So just for everyone's context too, that again, I'll keep saying it, there's adaptive reuse projects, embodied energy in existing buildings. And if we think about upgrading those and requiring electrification, you're asking for those types of projects to not go through this process. And so while new construction is a certain thing, we are looking at an entire city of redevelopment. We don't have a lot of green sites. And so requiring electrification is a particular situation in our city. So I think that's where we landed, to give everybody some context about why electrification isn't in it at this point and why there are a lot of variables to look at. And since this isn't increasing FAR and those sorts of things, I really appreciate the feedback from sustainability about increasing to 60%, that we are kind of really pushing, at least on that side, for renewables on site. So just a couple comments to add to it.
Commissioner Briggs.
Is there an opportunity to put in there something that states if this is a new build, then it would be required to be all electric? Is that, I don't remember that being discussed, but obviously I wasn't in the last course. I don't know how that would fall out. Anyway, if I don't know how others feel about that, but that might be the way to allow adaptive reuse, that option. And then I might be in favor of the language around a cap of 40 feet or whatever you think is appropriate in terms of providing some comfort around this ordinance that provides the flexibility, but also a little bit of a clear understanding of what that looks like. And then what other notes did I have? Oh, I was just wondering, I know we've talked in the past that this is not meant to fix the parts of code that are broken, but I wonder if there's an opportunity. I don't know how much, I assume planning staff is kind of keeps a tally of things, the questions that come in, but I wonder if there's an opportunity to sort of be very explicit about just trying to make sure, especially if this moves forward, really tracking what sort of requests or questions that come up around it to make sure, okay, are there pieces of code that do need to be fixed? So we recognize that this wasn't addressing, or that help for evaluation of how well it's working, a couple of years down the line, I guess.
Commissioner Gibrandl.
I like the cap idea too, just because I think it's going to have more support that way than just something that feels totally open. So I think that's a good idea. I also would be curious to see if, like, with the new build, because I totally get the adaptive reuse part, I think that would be difficult. Or without requiring parking, you just suddenly freed up a whole lot of cash there. So it feels like if you're taking that option, that, I don't know, is there some other something? Because if you, I mean, that's a big cost. It really is. So I don't know. It's just something to put out there, I guess, in terms of just as we continue to deliberate on this.
Commissioner Briggs, did you have a quick follow-up on that?
Yeah, just on the parking issue, I think we need to just remember, we've heard a lot that even if we get rid of parking minimums or, waive that it feels like we've heard a lot that the financing for projects doesn't usually allow that. And so I don't know that we're really going to get rid of 100 parking spaces, that's unfortunately something that is still built into the financing of projects, that I hope there is more flexibility about that in the future, but I don't know if it really could manifest. So, I mean, if there's others who know more about this than I do, feel like it's more of a risk, but I guess I'm not as concerned about that piece.
I would say I don't profess to know about the financing, but one of the things that gets brought up is that we talked before about the EV requirements, but has that passed at council yet, Commissioner Ackerman? The EV parking standards?
I want to say no. Yeah.
Okay, that's one is that one also like waiting for November so that there's 2 readings?
I think it's going to have its first reading on November 16th. So that would be second reading December something.
The reason that I think that that's really important, right, is that we heard from a petitioner just today, right, the concern over the costs associated with that. And that also, but depending on, if it gets approved, like the multipliers for some types of development are pretty hefty in terms of how many chargers they would need to include. And there's that there can be some concern about getting onto the grid at that. And so honestly, if you can save those, like, I don't know how that's going to work out for financing projects either, quite frankly, right? And if you can save some of that by just not building the parking in the first place, like, that's where I think this goes hand in hand with what Commissioner Gibb Randall just said. Like, you can have the additional electricity requirements to fully electrify your building if you're not having to build the parking, personally. So I actually saw those things as going really well hand in hand together too. And to Commissioner Sauvé's point about should there be a limit, like, if, again, I really like the way that you portrayed this about car storage and thinking about what development types is this allowed for. People who are choosing a sustainable building hopefully are less likely to get into a personal automobile, and are more likely to be using transit, and so, or walking, right? So I think that makes sense. Like, I think that those 2 things are linked, and I wouldn't actually put a limit. If I would leave this, because we know that developers will build it if they're the people that they want to live in that facility need it, then we can let them build it. But this provides some additional flexibility if there is a building type that falls into the sustainable or affordable category where they may, their residents may not require all of that car storage. Commissioner Milstein.
So I've been waiting to have this conversation because I've actually talked to probably about a month ago, to a commercial lender who does development financing. And so the best way to describe it, and this is the way it was described to me, is it's a scale. All right, so if you don't build the parking, you save some money, but are the rents going to be high enough without parking to support the construction cost that's going to be associated with it? It's with every piece that we asked them, from affordable housing to electrification, it's that, the cost benefit that the banks are doing. So it's not that they're opposed to the banks aren't opposed to not funding something that doesn't have parking. Their concern is, are the rents going to stay high enough, or are the rents going to be adjusted enough to make the project work? And so that's where it all comes from. So I think we've had developers say we can't get financing without parking. I don't think that's true, partly because we really haven't had a project in Ann Arbor that hasn't come to us, like an apartment complex that has come to us with no parking at all, to see if, the rents can still be in line with, its competition. So that's where the dilemma is there aren't market studies for this. And so it's not true that, I know that's what we've been told. It's not true. There are projects all over the country that are being funded that have zero parking. It's just Ann Arbor doesn't have that yet, at least in large scale. And that's why developers don't feel confident in financing anything like that. But ultimately, it's not about, do they feel confident enough? They have to look at pro forma and be confident in the numbers that are before them. So it's all about the numbers.
Commissioner Sauvé.
I just want to add, like, the follow-up between, similar to height limits, I raised the parking relative to its success and feedback to how we see projects, and neighbors concerned about if there's enough parking or if it's going to creep out onto the street, and then developers and financing. So it's just, in terms of the whole conversation of projects we have, I don't have an issue with no parking, but I do want to raise it as a scenario to think about in discussion as this goes forward, that as it's written, it could go down to zero. It could, in some scenario, lose 100 parking spots, and what that means for feedback when a project might come before us. So that's more kind of how I want to raise it. The same way we're talking about what 30% means at the upper end of the height spectrum, because it's not adjusting FAR, but we could have a very slender, tall thing. It's the same with parking. We get a lot of sustainability impact just by having less cars on the road. But I think we will get feedback from neighbors of some of these developments, possibly knowing the types of projects we've seen previously too.
Commissioner Gibrandel.
And just to that point, I got some feedback from a friend who like almost never gets in a car, and she sometimes watches what we do, and she says, you all say, well, they can just take the bus, but we're not necessarily looking at, because there's a bus stop that's nearby or something like that, we're not necessarily looking whether there are reasonable bike lanes and sidewalks in that area. And she said, I'm not going to get on a bus if I have, that comes every half an hour, if the grocery store is 15 minutes away. I'm going to bike or walk there. And so that's just something to layer in, I think, not necessarily to the ordinance, but more to our general discussion around having developments that have no parking, is that if we're saying that, we need to really make sure that that area has enough of other types of transit infrastructure in it to be able to accommodate the reality of somebody living there. So I just want to, I know that doesn't have much to do with this, what's directly in front of us, but I just wanted to make sure I got that out there for our larger discussion around these issues.
Other feedback to Ms. DeLeo. I still have some more, but I'm also on ORC, so Ms. DeLeo's heard a lot of it. Commissioner Briggs.
I guess maybe on that last point, is there a way to bring that into as a consideration for being able to waive parking? there does, that obviously is a direction that the city is headed. It's we just passed the carbon neutrality goals. We're supposed to be, we need to robustly, and we need to move forward with our transportation plan, and when that gets adopted and but if there's any opportunity to evaluate the environment around it, to make sure it's not in an island of, no connectivity.
Commissioner Gabrandel.
Just to follow up on that, it's inherently difficult because it's the connectivity part that's important. And so you have your site, but you can't expect somebody to have to put in a bike lane for a mile or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's tricky, right? So we have to look at that context, but it is an intriguing idea to think about. And it could be part of how we structure this, but it also could just be something for our meta awareness as we are, we have the ordinance, but thinking about, it's a planned project, so we have discretion, but thinking about, where they really are located and what's feasible if they're going to go down the road of no road, of no road for cars.
So two things I would add is that, first of all, to be clear, this would be doing away with the plan project entirely. There is no more discretion. I want to make sure that we're all aware of that. We're writing this in so that it makes it very clear to everyone now what the rules are, and that there's not this so I think getting that part right is really important. The other thing that I personally, my observation from commission that's really hard is that the places where there's concern about parking generally are in very well connected places. It's in our more dense neighborhoods. And so those are the places where you actually should be able to live without a car. And many people, in fact, do, or again, use the parking for car storage because it is so well connected. So this is like, in the places that aren't so well connected, I think that it would be more difficult for a developer, right? They want somebody to rent their apartments or buy their condos. My sense is that they're going to want to build it because they recognize that people may need it. And hopefully we get to a place where, regardless of where you live in the city, you won't, but we're not quite there yet. And I think my concern is that honestly, that metric is going to make it even more challenging because a metric of like connectivity isn't going to take away that contention. The only thing that thing that might take it away is something like, well, you can waive half of the parking, right? And this is why having a higher threshold about these being buildings that are otherwise really difficult to require, right? But that effectively, these are the standards. These are the sustainability standards, the kind of affordable housing standards. That's where I might see this. And I don't know. It's tricky, but all of this, the car storage aspect of this is I commend staff for including it in here because I think this is something that we talked about in ORC, but it's also the one that's I would hate to have this hung up for that aspect. I'm wondering what other commissioners think about the parking as one of those, the car storage. If there's a way that we can both encourage sustainable and affordable housing and discourage car storage, but also be responsive to what we often hear.
I would only point out that, as structured, it's piecemeal. Things can be cherry picked without blowing up the whole. I did try to keep that in mind, that if one thing needed more work versus another, although there's currently a lot of repetition, each is in its own section. They don't rely on each other. They don't refer back to each other. And so I did that to try to make sure that if we needed to work on one more than the other, we could.
I would be in support of the next time this comes before us, which I think would be for a public hearing, that it would be pretty close, seeing if there's more comfort with the car storage aspect and seeing what kind of feedback we get, and also just amongst ourselves, right, how we feel about that. I wouldn't cut it yet, personally.
I wasn't planning on cutting it. I was envisioning others might, just in case it got cut.
Right.
That it didn't have to be sent back to be rewritten. There could be amendments on the floor.
Yeah. I wanted to just see the way that I read this. There was in your track changes document, it was clear at the very end that you can't count some of the sustainability and affordable housing elements towards what would be required of downtown premiums. But what was unclear to me was whether the sustainability and or affordability elements that would allow you for some flexibility on height, those same elements are allowed to be counted towards this car storage aspect.
Okay, I've just screen shared again. Now, say that again.
So that number 4, that first sentence makes it clear that we're not double counting between what these are. I mean, they're not planned projects anymore, but these new elements, these exceptions to our height standards can't double count there. But the question is, and I think it's actually at the end of the parking section, what that second sentence about or what yes, it's this about whether that second sentence means that you have the same list of elements for parking largely as for height. If I have 60% of my roof in solar panels, and if as written, I'm ready for electric, but I haven't fully electrified, can I do both increased height and parking and decreased parking?
So as written, you're eligible for both if you just either, as written, you are eligible if you put the solar panels and electrification features. You are eligible for both the height and the parking waiver. What you would need to double up would be, you would need to do the solar panels, electrification features to get the height increase or parking waiver. And you would need to be lead something to get the premiums.
Right. But if I have 15%, let's do the affordable housing is clear. If I have 15% affordable housing, I can both increase my height by 30% and I can waive my parking, at least as drafted right now. I don't have to do, it doesn't have to be the sustainable. That 15% counts for both of them. I don't have to go up to 30%, doesn't have to like add on top, but I can't count it towards the affordable housing premium. I would need to add additional in order to get the affordable housing premium.
Correct. Yeah, you might need like whatever, 25, 35%, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with that. I just want to make sure that that was the intention. So thank you. That answered that question. I agree about limiting height to 40 feet. I think that's important. I know that the Office of Sustainability and Innovation reviewed this for the solar panels. I'm wondering if you ask them about electrification. I think what Commissioner Sauvé said was right on, but I also, again, given that if this is, I trust Mr. Garber that that's the exact wording from A20. If that's in there, like, I would love their take on that as well. Like if this is 2-week sauce, what we have right now on electrification. So I think that before we see this again, that would be helpful. And then your question about increased front setback and like that's allowed in here. Thank you for trying to break the code. Like that's what when we revise codes, that's what we should be doing, is trying to break it. And I wonder if it might be something about like that we limit increased front setback, that you can't increase your front setback unless it's to offer further protection of natural features. Like I could imagine that there might be some, landmark trees in the front yard, and that would be a reasonable reason. But otherwise, I do think it's moving against our goals to move things away from the road. But I'm wondering if anybody has any other ideas about reasons that we would be okay with buildings moving away from the road. Commissioner Sauvé.
Maybe just a table similar to the height one to show what a front setback 50% increase is in all of these zones would also just help when this comes back. And, maybe it is 50% for everything and 20% for front yard setback. I don't, because like we're trying to make clear rules and the front yard is different. So I think a table also gives us a good metric to what we're really, how dramatic it might be.
Any Commissioner Briggs?
All right, a couple more thoughts in terms of, I think having the flexibility provides some opportunities in terms of the setbacks for maybe something creative to happen in that space. I mean, I think one of the reasons we haven't liked it in the past is because that's often been filled with parking or it's just been so far back. But there are other, pleasant things that can be done with space and that you may want to have the flexibility for, and that might provide some strong benefit. And then I just want to throw this in here for thought. I think there's a fairly strong likelihood that Planning Commission might be talking more about parking in the near future. And I wonder if the scenario that is being set up right now, where removing parking really comes with some other really strong trade-off or, public benefit. I mean, I think we've already had discussions a lot around the table in the past that we see it as a benefit already just to remove parking in our community. That is a strong, we've been asking for it. And so the one reason I could think to not go down this route is it seems to make that next conversation maybe potentially more challenging because we're not, it seems to imply that you should be providing some other really strong benefit if you're getting rid of your parking. So I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for making future conversations, or at least making, I don't know, just want to raise that.
Any other thoughts? Ms. DeLeo, is this what you wanted out of us for this?
It is fine. Yeah. You guys are much more complimentary than I anticipated, but I'm going to go with it. But that's why I'm looking over here and been making notes. So we'll do a little cleanup to be sort of that final addition, and we'll keep going.
Great. Would anyone like to make a motion to postpone this? Moved by Commissioner Milstein. I assume open-ended for whenever you want to bring it back to us. Seconded by Commissioner Sauvé. Any discussion of postponement? All in favor of postponing this motion, please don't say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
Yes, great. Any opposed? None are opposed, so this motion will be postponed. Can we take a 5-minute break? We've got one item and then audience participation, but just to grab some water. So we'll come back at 9:37.
Sounds good.
we are now on agenda item 10C, which is a petition for 3411 Gettys Road annexation and zoning for city council approval. This looks like no petitioner presentation. We'll go directly to staff presentation. Is that right, Ms. Leo?
Yes, thank you. The petitioner, the homeowner was offered, but the opportunity to join, but it is not required. This is the 3411 Gettys Road annexation and zoning. It is a pretty straightforward annexation and zoning of about a 1 acre lot that contains a single family home at the northwest corner of Gettys and Sumac Lane, the northeast side of town. Property owner has requested annexation from Ann Arbor Township, R1A zoning designation, and they will, upon annexation, connect to existing water and sanitary sewer service. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation, but I can share, if at the commission's pleasure, the zoning map of the area. There is R1A zoning nearby. Engineering has commented that the R1A zoning is appropriate for the infrastructure. We have worked with the property owner about the tap fees, water meter, water recovery, so forth fees. The surveyor noticed the format of the legal description was probably not something that the state would approve, but we have been working with the property owner to get a better legal description, or in a different format, I should say. And we will have this within a week, so it will not in fact impact the timeline. It doesn't really, the city and the township are very clear about what area we are annexing. They are releasing and annexing, so that is not the issue. The issue is formatting for the State Boundary Commission. They are a little bit persnickety. As staff is recommending approval of this project. And as I mentioned, if you desire, I can put up the zoning map. If not, we can move forward.
All right, I think for right now, we'll move forward with the public hearing. And then if commissioners want the zoning map up, we can do that during discussion. So this is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the proposed annexation and rezoning of 3411 Gettys. Public comment can be made by calling 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477 and then entering meeting ID 998-3388-8379. City staff will select callers that have raised their hands digitally. You can raise your hand by pressing *9. This is to buy a little bit of time to let people call in case they are waiting on us. I do not see any callers in the queue, but we'll give it another 10 seconds or so.
We can open as well if we can do slightly out of order if need be. I think that would probably be friendly to the commission.
All right, if anybody comes in and they raise their hand, we will reopen the public hearing for you, but right now it's closed. I'll read the proposed motion. The Ann Arbor City Planning Commission hereby recommends that the mayor and city council approve the 3411 Gettys Road annexation and R1A single family dwelling district zoning, subject to providing a distance and bearing legal description prior to city council approval. The motion is moved by Commissioner Sauvé, seconded by Commissioner Milstein. We're in discussion. Any questions? Request to see a map. I looked at the map in the staff report. It looks like it's consistent with the neighbors. So, and this is, again, for people who may be watching, consistent with effectively the agreed upon area that will eventually be City of Ann Arbor property. These township islands that are slowly being annexed. Okay. Do you want a voice vote? Why don't you do a roll call and that
Okay.
sounds fine.
Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Yes.
Commissioner Briggs.
Yes.
Commissioner Sauvé.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Milstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Yes.
That is 7 unanimous votes. It passes.
Very good, thank you. We are on item 11, audience participation. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes on any item of interest. Public comment can be made one more time by calling 206-337-9723 or 213-338-8477. And our meeting ID is 998-3388-8397. City staff will select you after raising your hand by pressing *9. Give this just a little bit. I don't see anyone joining.
No.
Okay, so we can move on to item number 12, which is commission proposed business. Anything anyone wants to propose? Commissioner Gibrandel.
With these discussions of electrification, which I'm generally in support of, but I also just feel like I don't understand enough about what sort of issues there could potentially be with the grid. I've been asked this a few times by people, and I have no answer. And so I guess I just want to make sure that as we are making recommendations again, which I'm supportive of, that we just also understand what that may mean. And I don't know if that just means, you know, talking to people or I don't know that it's its own special working session or, you know, whatever, but as people are perhaps, especially Commissioner Mills, you know, since this is part of your work life, your professional life, with the projects where there's solar involved, then you're offsetting some of that by generating your own energy. But I just remember when we approved the upgrading of the DTE station on South State, that they talked about sort of what a mess Ann Arbor is in terms of the way that their grid was, quote, designed, which really wasn't so much designed as kind of like, it's very vulnerable. I remember them describing that in terms of how storms happen and what, you know, areas that go down and things like that. I just think it would be helpful for us as we are kind of spreading these ideas that we just understand what the implications are as well. And again, that does not dampen my enthusiasm for you know, being able to ask these questions and to be able to think about integrating them into our new ordinances. But I just want to make sure we're getting kind of a contextual view of what that means for these other issues as well. So I just want to put that out there.
And I would add to that, that the idea of cost is something that I've heard very mixed opinions of, particularly if it's a single, you know, a single family house versus attached units. And so I'll tack on that if we can get some better information, like a critical, you know, view of like what this does, I think that would be really helpful to helping us understand how this fits in. So from somebody who like knows about the costs, like, and how it plays out at different scales of development and different types of development.
Yeah.
And by critical, I don't mean like anti, I mean like realistic, like what is possible in this climate, you know, and I've got some ideas that I can of people to contact. It's just I've not asked those questions myself. So I'm happy to talk to staff about that.
And to tag on to that too, my folks live in town in an older building and they have electric heat, and holy cow, their heating bill is super expensive. And that may just be because it's an older building. but it's just something to be aware of. Like, again, we've had just a couple of discussions around this with people that aren't necessarily the most qualified to answer it. And so I just want to make sure that we know what we're talking about when we're tossing these ideas around.
Thank you for raising that, Commissioner Gabriandel. I would also, if we could add on to the list, whether staff could loop back with the city forestry department, forester, about what it, like, whether it might make sense to increase the mitigation for trees that were taken errantly against what was shown on the plans. What the pros and cons of doing that is. I mean, I think it's just changing a number, but is there any reason not to do that? Anything else? Okay. Item 13, anyone interested in making a motion to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Briggs, seconded by Commissioner Sauvé. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Ackerman, he's not speaking. All right, we are adjourned.
Night.